Today I'm going to rank every armored vehicle in Battlefield 5 from worst to best. For every single tank, I'm going to give it a score out of 10 for each of these categories. Mobility, armor, anti-air, anti-tank, and anti-infantry capabilities, and overall versatility in various situations. It is going to receive a score of 1 if it is the worst tank for the category, and 10 if it is the best. This is not going to be the most scientific way to calculate things, and each category is weighted the same. These are going to be based on the stats of each tank, and of course in the end, it is still my opinion, so it is not to be taken as truth. Also, several weeks ago I sent out a poll asking what your favorite tank is, and I'll review the results at the end of this video. Feel free to take a guess right now and leave your thoughts in the comment section and see if it matches up with my top tank or the community's choice. Alright, let's start off with the light tanks. For the stat count, I'll rate its mobility as 10. It is the fastest vehicle among all of the tanks, and despite it lacking tracks and has the possibility of getting lodged on a large rock, I think it deserves this amount of points. Next category is armor. It can get a 2 shot by a tiger, so this is a solid 1. As for the anti-tank capabilities, it will be a 4. It can still one-hit a plane if you're accurate, and despite the fact that I tend to kill more planes with a normal tank than the AA in a round, it is not something it is designed to do, so I think a 4 is appropriate. For the anti-tank category, given it only has a total damage of around 140 per shot, even with the rockets that you equip, it gets a 3. Then it is time for anti-infantry role. It is by far one of the best for this job, with a 20mm autocannon equipped. Combined with the coaxial gun, it can fire non-stop, shredding enemies to pieces. It gets a 9. Overall versatility, it gets a 6 because it is great at fighting infantry and it is mobile, but when it sees any other tanks with a competent driver, without some kind of element of surprise, you can say goodbye to this tank. Alright, moving on to the 38T. For mobility, it gets a 10 just like the stat count. It is a tad bit slower, but it doesn't get stuck on things as much, so I think it deserves that score. As for armor, it gets a 1 for the same reason instead of the stat count. It gets a 2 for anti-tank since you can't get rockets, and it is tough to kill a tank as fast as the stat count can, even if you can catch it by surprise. Unless you watch my mine video where I put mines behind unsuspected British tanks and it goes boom. Either way, still a 2 from me. Anti-infantry, it gets the best score at 10. It gets the same benefit as the stat count, and it even has the S-mines that you can just run into a group of infantry and kill them all with a ring of fire. As for versatility, it is a tad bit worse than the stat count, so it gets a 5. Now to the medium tanks, starting with the Valentine. It has a pretty good speed, but not the best, so it gets a 6 for mobility. Armor is in the middle of the pack, so it gets a 5. Anti-air will be a 4, which will be a recurring theme for a few tanks. For anti-tank, it can fire extremely quickly and can definitely mess with the aim of the enemy. It also holds lots of rounds, so it gets a 6 for this. When it comes to killing infantry, it can go with the 2-pounder in case round route, and it can even use the increased ammo capacity upgrade, allowing you to dish out so much damage to the infantry. The coaxial gun is also superb. It gets a 7 for this. As for versatility, it is by far the most versatile tank in the game. It can kill tanks and infantry alike with ease. It excels at pretty much at all situations except for the extreme cases, so it gets a highest score of 10. Panzer IV is next. It is pretty much the same for Valentine for its mobility, armor, and anti-air capabilities, so it gets the same score of 6, 5, and 4 respectively. And for anti-tank purposes, each round from the KWK-40 deals more damage than the 6-pounder from the Valentine, but it fires more slowly. This ends up being its problem when facing the Valentine head-on. Because of its slower rate of fire, it punishes you more if you miss and your aim gets affected more often from incoming Valentine fire. So it gets a 5 instead of 6 from the Valentine for this category. As for anti-infantry, overall it gets more gadgets and a good default HE round. It even has a flare in case rounds, but you don't get the ammo capacity upgrade, so I think it is pretty much even with the Valentine in this case, and it gets a 7. Versatility wise, it also gets a 10 for the same reason instead of the Valentine. Moving on, it is the time for the tank destroyers. We will start off with the Valentine Archer. With the engine upgrade, this thing is so fast and agile, but without the turrets, it cannot effectively angle the armor to reduce incoming damage, and it cannot side scrape. If you're not familiar with these tactics, please take a look at my tank guide where I describe various tank tactics and the stats of each tank in the link above. But I digress. With these reasons, it gets a 6. Its armor is slightly more tough than the other medium tanks mentioned earlier, and without a turret, it has one less weak spot to be hit, so it gets a 6. Anti-air, it has a 3 because without turrets and a poor gun elevation, it makes it more difficult to track the planes and land the shots. For anti-tank capabilities, it is one of the best tanks for this role. It is absolutely ridiculous. Because of this, it gets an 8. Without a turret, killing infantry is a little more challenging, so it gets a 3. Overall, it excels at fighting other tanks in large open areas and for ambush, but other than that, it is quite limited. Its versatility score is a 3 for me. The Sturk 4 was also recently added into the game in Chapter 2. It is the same as the Panzer 4 in terms of speed, but with its lack of a turret. Some of the strategies mentioned earlier cannot be done, so it gets a 5 on mobility. It has a slightly better armor and it doesn't have a turret weak point, so it gets a 6 for armor, which is 1 point above the Panzer 4. Anti-air gets a 3 because of the same reason as of the Archer. For anti-tank, it's the same exact cannon as the Panzer 4, but the AP round travels a tad bit faster, so it gets a 6. When it comes to infantry, it doesn't have a coaxial gun, so you might even need to switch seats to the MG position, but if you have a competent teammate on the gun, it can deal some serious damage. But because of these restrictions, it gets a 3. It is overall less versatile than the Archer, so it gets 2 in that department for me. Alright, I hope you're still with me here because we're getting into the big mean tank category. Let's start off with the Churchill Mark 7. It is one of the slowest tanks in the game because of its size, so it gets 2 for mobility. Its armor, however, compensates for that speed. It has a heavy armor material modifier. The exact numerical value of that is unclear right now. It also has reduced incoming damage multiplier compared to the medium tank, so it gets a 7. Anti-air gets a 4, just like any other tanks. For anti-tank, its cannon is not the best for it, especially if you have the howitzer cannon upgrade. You can argue that it can use a HESH round, but because of its slow velocity, it drops quickly and it is less effective at range. For these reasons, I give it a 4. But for anti-infantry, it is a mini Sturmtiger with its howitzer upgrade. It is so good at attacking and defending objectives and choke points. It gets a solid 7. As for versatility, it is a good infantry support tank, but it is slow and clunky. It also suffers in the urban areas, so it gets a 4. As for its cousin, the Churchill Gun Carrier, because of a lack of a turret, it gets 1 point less at the lowest score of 1 for mobility. It does lack a turret weak spot, so it gets a respectable score of 8 for armor. Anti-air, it is worse than the Archer because of how slow it is to reposition, so it gets a 2. Anti-tank wise, its 3-pounder is quite effective at range. It also has an enhanced zoom for longer range sniping. Paired with the HESH rounds, it can dish out some insane amount of damage. Because of this, it gets an 8 from me. For anti-infantry, apart from sniping from afar, it is pretty helpless, so it gets a 2. Overall, it is a slow, clunky tank that doesn't have a turret. Its only effective role is to support infantry on big linear maps. I'm sad to say its versatility score is a grand total of 1. And I'm sure you know what's coming next. The Tiger. For mobility, it shares the same score as that of the Churchill Mark 7. It gets a 2. For armor, it is a tad bit worse than the Churchill, but not by much. It has a slightly more forgiving angle of attack, so enemies can deal more damage to it compared to the Churchill. The Tiger does have an added protection from the manlet in the front of the turrets. Overall, I still think it deserves a 7. Anti-air is a tank, nothing more to say. But now, it comes to the Tiger's strong points. Its 8.8cm gun. When you pair that up with the heat rounds, it dishes out an insane amount of damage. It gets a top score of 10 in this category. For anti-infantry, it is okay but not great. It can hold down the choke point well and has an S- for defense if needed. I'll give it a 5. For overall versatility, it is good for fighting tanks, especially in open fields. It is also decent at holding choke points down, especially if you have a support repairing you. Otherwise, it is still quite slow and susceptible to many other threats from infantry if you are unaware or is caught by surprise. So it gets a versatility score of 5. Alright, now moving on to the AA tanks. The Valentine AA has the same mobility score as that of the other medium tanks at 6. Its armor is worse because of the large turret and because of its multiplier, so it gets a score of 4. Anti-air is a specialty. Even with the nerfs, I think that this is a tank that can consistently give planes trouble, so it gets a 10. For anti-tank, it practically does nothing, so it gets a 1. Even with the recent nerf, I think with the combination of its main gun and the case rounds, it is still very effective at killing infantry, so it gets a 7. Overall, it is not particularly effective in most situations. It is completely helpless when it sees another armored vehicle, so it gets 3 in versatility. Now the Flak Panzer is going to be very similar, so I won't take too much time talking about it. Its mobility score, armor, anti-air, anti-tank capabilities are the same at 6, 4, 10, and 1. It is slightly worse than the Valentine AA fighting infantry, especially it doesn't have the case rounds, so it gets a 6. Overall, it also gets a versatility score of 3. Now, this is the last category. It is the 2 reinforcement tanks. First, let's talk about the Churchill Crocodile. Just like its cousin, it gets a 2 for mobility. For armor, however, it has a much lower incoming damage multiplier than any other tanks in the game. It is the single toughest tank in the Battlefield 5, so it gets a 10 in this category. Anti-air is a 4. For anti-tank, it is also extremely well equipped with its main cannon, as well as AP rounds it holds. It has quite a lot of those rounds in reserve and can take out quite a lot of them, so it gets an 8. For killing infantry, it is perhaps one of the best for it. The default rounds and the coaxial guns are quite effective at it, and when you pair that up with the flamethrower, it is quite unstoppable. For versatility, it is decent at killing tanks and infantry, but it still suffers from the large size and low mobility, and so it gets a 6. Last but not least, we have the Sturm Tiger. It suffers from the same issue as the Churchill gun carrier, so it gets a mobility score of 1. It does have a very good armor to compensate for it, but not as good as that of the Crocodile, so it gets a 9 for this. Anti-air wise, it is almost non-existent. Trying to shoot down the plane with a 380mm shell would deserve a top place spot, so I'll give it a 1. How about tank, you say? This shell does the most damage to a tank. Consider it doesn't bounce off and you actually land one. It is also severely limited by its range. Because of these shortcomings, it gets a 5. But not all hope is lost. When it comes to infantry, especially bunch-up ones, this tank can rifle V1 rockets. It definitely deserves a 10 for this category. As for versatility, it is questionable how effective it can be in most situations, so it gets a 3 for this. Now that we have all of these scores down, it is time to show you the ranking. Let's start off at the bottom at number 13. It is the Churchill gun carrier with an average score of 3.57, then the number 12 is Stuke 4 at 4.28. As much as I like this tank because it is Stuke, it is simply not very effective compared to some of the other tanks. Number 11 is the Churchill Mark 7 with a score of 4.57. It is definitely good for killing infantry, but the other areas left a lot to be desired. Then we have 2 tanks tied for the next spot at number 9 with a score of 4.86. They are the Sturm Tiger and the Flak Panzer. They are both very effective at what they are designed to do, but suffers in other categories. At number 8, we have the Valentine AA with a score of 5. It is a tad bit better than the Flak Panzer, so it took a spot above it. Next up is number 7. We have the Valentine Archer with a score of 5.14. It is so good at killing tanks, but it suffers from a lack of turrets. Then number 6, we have the Tiger with a score of 5.42. It is so fun to use and is definitely the most iconic tank in the war. At number 5, we have the Panzer 38T with a score of 5.57. It is a tank that can melt infantry at range or close up. Paired with its high mobility, it is one tank that is immensely fun to use. At number 4, we have the Sackhound with a score of 5.71. It is just a tad bit more versatile than the Panzer 38T and still retains its anti-infantry capabilities. Then at number 3, it is Churchill Crocodile. It has a score of 6.14. This is definitely one of the most underrated tanks in the game. This is partly due to the spawn system that you can't call in one for yourself unless you redeploy, and everyone just loves calling in artillery strikes in V1s. And at number 2, we have the Panzer 4. It has a score of 6.42, and if you are new to tanking, this is the one to go with. It is pretty much good at everything. It may not be the best at a specific role, but you simply can't go wrong with it. And the winner, at number 1, is a Valentine Mark 8 with a score of 6.57. It is the best tank in the game from my personal experience and also from the score we got. Its fast firing gun and the ability to hold more rounds are the reasons it took first place over the Panzer 4. Now, it is time to review the community choice. We have got more than 500 votes, so thank you so much for voting. At the 13th place, we have the Valentine AA with 2 votes. We have 2 tanks sharing the 11th place that receive 5 votes each. They are the Flak Panzer and the Churchill gun carrier. At rank 10, we have the Panzer 38T with 23 votes. Next at rank 9, got 26 votes and is the Churchill Crocodile. Then these are close ones. At rank 8, we have the Churchill Mark 7 with 30 votes, and at rank 7, we have the Sackhound with 31 votes. At rank 6, we have got the Stuke 4 with 43 votes. Its British counterpart, that is a Valentine Archer, got 49 votes and secured the 5th spot. And at number 4, with 53 votes, we have got the Sturm Tiger. We are now onto the top 3. Are you ready? At number 3, we have the Valentine Mark 8 with 63 votes. I expected this to rank higher, but here we go. At rank 2, we have the Panzer IV with 88 votes. It is definitely a fine choice if you ask me. Then the community choice winner is the Tiger 1 with 125 votes. This tank is so good in many situations, I totally respect the spot you all played it at. Once again, thank you for your participation. On my results and the community choice results, what you expected, let me know in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a thumbs up if you wish. Consider sharing it if you think others will find this enjoyable. Also consider subscribing if you think this has earned it. Have a great day now, and I'll see you all again soon.